Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the Old Ways podcast. I appreciate it all. We're here tonight as part of our interview series with Shane Ivey, Scott Glancy, and Caleb Stokes are a part of the brain trust, as it were, of Arc Dream Publishing. And we're going to talk about some Delta Green. So I guess what I'd like to do at the top, if I can, is maybe starting with Shane first, just sort of get a blurb of you for those who don't know you and what you've done.
Sure. First of all, is this being recorded just for audio, or is the video going out to people too?
That is totally an option for you. If you don't want the video to go out to people, that's fine.
I'm fine either way. I guess I just want to know before I start stripping, or
Oh, okay, yeah.
Really
so if you're gonna
waving firearms around, for instance.
Yeah, so just strip for the paid version, Shane.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean that's how you do it.
You got to leave a little. You got to leave them wanting more. Yeah.
Right.
I think I've said I may have told you guys before that when OnlyFans first came out, me and Dennis made jokes about what we needed to do was set up an OnlyFans, but instead of showing us getting naked, it just showed us like with the webcam pointing at us while we're working at the computer.
People would pay for it.
Share in the life. Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps we could threaten them with stripping. Like, if you don't pay money, we're going to start taking our clothes off.
It's like that National Lampoon's album that is, buy this album or I'll shoot this dog.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've been running Arc Dream Publishing, which publishes Delta Green, the role-playing game, for a long time now, like 20 years, I guess. And before that, I worked at a lot of different places. I was a copy editor at a Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper for a few years, and did magazine editing at a university, and a bunch of other things. So,
Sure.
but that's all behind me now. Much like the angels with Charlie, I've been brought into a better life.
Okay, fair enough. Is it Scott? Do you prefer or?
Please, Scott. Scott is what I prefer. Adam only goes on court orders.
And as a former prosecutor, you would know. So Scott, tell us in brief or in length, your choice.
You better make it brief so that everybody gets a word in edgewise. I have been playing role-playing games since about 77 or 78 when a teacher brought them over during the summer and let a couple of us try out the original, box set of Dungeons and Dragons. Quickly figured out there was more to life than dungeon crawling. You could go outside, and then stumbled my way through various games. Found Call of Cthulhu pretty early as the first game that really felt like it was built in the modern world, or built for a modern world of adventure. Even if it was a period piece set in the 20s and 30s. But always enjoyed it, always enjoyed Call of Cthulhu. Got well into things like Lovecraft because of the role-playing game. I'd had some exposure to Lovecraft, but I didn't start getting into Lovecraft until after I realized that there were things to learn about this body of work so that I could, succeed in making better Call of Cthulhu games. But when I was in law school, I had decided that I wasn't going to have a TV set, and I was going to be really nose to the grindstone and do my work. But unfortunately, John Tynes and the boys from Pagan Publishing ambushed me with their zine, The Unspeakable Oath. And I want to say that the issue that jumped out was issue 3 of The Unspeakable Oath.
That's the one that got all of us. That's the one that got Dennis. That's the one that got me.
Yeah, and I saw that and was like, well, let's open this up. And then, boom, oh my gosh, I have to get all the back issues. And, oh my gosh, these guys are doing lovely work, really expanding the palette for Call of Cthulhu. And I had been writing up articles and submitting them to Challenge Magazine for GDW, because they were one of the few guys who published Call of Cthulhu games. And I thought, Call of Cthulhu articles in their monthly gaming magazine, getting lots of rejection slips. And I thought I'd try sending what I had sent to Lauren Weissman over to John Tynes, and I sent him my article called, The Men in Black, where I was taking the old UFOlogy pre-comic book, pre-Sondheim movie, I was like, how can we use this UFO mythology in Call of Cthulhu? And I sent this article to John, and he's like, yeah, you probably want to take a look at the next issue of The Unspeakable Oath. We might have already done that. And so I saw Delta Green and was like, oh, this is cool. Damn it. But how can I find a way to, do more of this? And so I sent him, we started talking, and he said, we don't have like a background for all the government agencies and things and intelligence stuff that's going on in America in the 1990s. Maybe you could put something together. And since I was doing a job search at the time, trying to find various federal employment in law enforcement intelligence, I thought, okay, I'll just take everything I looked at there, turn it into what eventually became the agency section at the back of the first Delta Green book. I'll just send it to John. And we have been communicating with, printed letters, coming off of word processor, dot matrix, printers with each other. And I sent him that giant, document or whatever, and he called me. I got an actual phone call, said, we need more of this. How fast did it take you to turn this around? We need more. And which is a shame, because as Shane knows, I've never turned anything around that fast ever again. So that's how John got me roped on Delta Green. And I did a lot of the work for Delta Green to add the historic vermicitude, to help suspend the disbelief for Delta Green. And I'm still at it ever since we got started early 93, just like 6 months before X-Files dropped.
Oh, wow.
Something like that.
There's timing for you.
That was white knuckle, because X-Files dropped and I didn't have a TV set, but I was house sitting for a friend, and I'm flipping channels, and I just flip across the scene in the pilot of the X-Files where they're pulling the casket up out of the ground, and the straps break and it rolls down and it cracks open, and there's some sort of freaky mutant inside the casket. And I'm like, okay, what's this? And I start watching, and I watch the rest of the pilot. I'm like, what is this? We should have this. I had a friend who worked for a video clipping service who had recorded for his service, had recorded the pilot, sent it to me on VHS. I watched it, copied it, sent it to John, said, John, are you aware of this? We need this. It's like, at first we were like, oh, we'll just watch some of this X-Files because it'll never make it. It'll be like Twin Peaks. They'll get one season. It won't be a thing. But once we realized it was a thing, we're like, oh shit, we need to get the book out quicker. We can't dawdle. What if the wave crests? What if the series starts sucking? Didn't exactly work out that way, but we got the book out maybe 3-4 years into the X-Files, something like that. We had to get Golden Dawn out first, or at least that was sort of the internal politics. People had worked on Golden Dawn. Golden Dawn was almost ready to go. They weren't going to just put it aside and use the money to do the Delta Green project. Oh, it's a good, marketing decision. John was like, no, I made these decisions, and, people are relying on me to live up to my word on the work they did, and we're going to use the money for that. So Delta Green had to wait until after Golden Dawn, and I think Realm of Shadows. Still doing some Delta Green, and still throwing it back in Lauren Weissman's face, because I finally got some old Twilight 2000 material that I'd originally written in the 90s, published in a fanzine a couple of months ago, because I was like, aha, Lauren said this wasn't what they were looking for, but ta-da, in your face, Weissman. Oh, wait, you died years ago and don't care.
What you're telling me, Scott, is you were not standing over the grave and just shaking the manuscript at the grave.
I did not go so far as to shake.
Just occasionally leave a contributor copy.
It's a fanzine on PDF. I can't even do that. I can't even do that. What am I going to do? Bury a laptop with Wi-Fi in his grave so that or a tablet so I can send him the various articles that I've gotten published. Anyways, so that's basically who I am, or how I got involved with Delta Green.
Awesome. And then Caleb, if you would.
Well, don't worry. I have published one scenario and helped edit The Conspiracy, which just came out, and I got my contributor copy. That's all that's come out from my work of Delta Green. I have been working for Arc Dream for a number of years, freelancing. I wrote some for Greg Stolze's game, Better Angels, and I originally came into playing RPGs not decades ago, but in 2007 or 2009, actually. And I've been entirely exposed through actual plays. I very rarely play without broadcasting it in some way. And that's how I came into the attention of Shane and Delta Green. And that's how I've been working for them, freelance writing and doing project stuff, helping with Kickstarters, and running Delta Green Dead channels on Patreon. So,
yes,
I am. If Shane is Charlie, I am a new angel. Talking to him on the radio, I don't know. I didn't watch Charlie's Angel. I was a sperm at the time. I am trying my best as the new kid on the block to contribute to the fine gaming tradition. Yeah,
certainly.
Well, let's make sure that we point out there, Caleb, that those of us who've been doing it longer than you are angry and resentful of your talent.
Good.
So there,
thank you.
You know,
that's what I was going for. Yeah.
Yes. Let the hate flow through you. That's what they say. But you're not at all, I would say, a complete newbie to the gaming circles. Like I had mentioned before we hit the record button, many of the people who listen to this and likely see it as well are big fans of your Red Market product. So thank you for that. We will continue to enjoy it and torture other people with it.
Yes, I also run my own game company, Have It On Games. We've written and published Red Markets and all its material. I also do decidedly sillier games like Phase Anatomy and Party Foul, the board game of drunk ducks. So it's not all government conspiracy and nihilistic horror. Yeah,
not all, but most.
Not all.
You got to have something to take the edge off sometime.
Well, you were a teacher for a while, so you didn't fall far from,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the teaching informs way more of the Delta Green side of my work than the fun,
Stolze was a social. Wasn't Stolze a social worker at one point?
I don't know.
Working in offices, trying to help people. I want to say he did that for a while, and that's why we have. That's why that's why he created Cult of Transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for Delta Green.
All right, so I would say then if and we can go around. So this is sort of the questions I'll give are really for anybody who feels they have got an answer. It doesn't have to be the right answer, by the way. Just an answer is reasonable. If you could quantify the current state of Delta Green. So from the historical stuff that I have, the shelf behind me has several hardbacks, which I am very proud of, including the newest Conspiracy. Kudos on that. I was very happy to see it arrive. When you think about Delta Green in the present state, meaning the current of the projects which are being rolled out, when fans say what's next, what's the first gear that you go to?
Don't say anything. Don't answer them. Ignore that question.
That's an
Got his mic. Got his mic. Yeah.
That seems fair. Keep quiet because the vagaries of production being what they are, it's really hard to promise and deliver. So it's best to,
Well, especially in our case, we sort of we tend to work from more from inspiration than. Well, I was going to say than preparation for the rhyme, but we do an awful lot of preparation too. So we work toward quality and toward sort of the point where we feel like what we've made is really, really cool and interesting, or as close to that as we can get when we're too sick of it to do anything else, as opposed to specific deadlines and schedules. So
we need 4 books this year.
I think there's an advantage to that, though. Just looking at the quality of the books that I have and that I've seen out from Arc Dream, I like that when I pick up or when I get a book from Arc Dream Publishing, it is 100% worth the money I've spent on it. especially with stuff like Impossible Landscapes and some of the text that I have at hand, I always feel like this is a quality product. I got my money's worth, if not more. And so I think it's reasonable to say, yeah, we don't have a ton of timelines because we want to get it right every time.
Yeah. That's basically what it comes down to, So things that are most imminent, Caleb's beleaguered God's Teeth is finally going to see the light of day soon. Dennis is working on illustrations for that. Kevin Ham is working on maps for that. So, and I've got it sent through a final editing pass. So it's going to be going into layout shortly. So that'll be loads of fun. And it turned out fantastic. And so I'm really excited for that. But we have a couple of shorter projects that are coming up soon as well. And then we have all kinds of stuff in the pipeline. So
fair enough.
I can give you a long list if you want, but
no, that's okay.
You tell me what details you most need. An scenario called Presence that's coming up soon, and another one called From the Dust that's coming up soon, and fiction collection of Dennis's short stories. Those are all like looming imminently.
So if I can ask then, Caleb, given God's Teeth being a little bit more imminent, maybe you could give us an idea about what we would be looking forward to in that without spoiling anything, of course.
Well, I owe a lot of God's Teeth to Scott. Countdown was such a impactful book on my brain and what I understand to be of Delta Green, that as it transitioned from a COC setting into its own system, which I think is fantastic and far better than what it could have done in COC with the bonds and everything, and as sort of the understanding of cosmic horror came to meet me where I live more. Like, my problem with COC was like, yeah, I don't have to worry about finding a book in Enochian in my ancestral manse in New England. I could get stabbed in the trailer park I live in. That's where fear lives for me. And like, I certainly want somebody with tentacles to stab me doing that. Like, and as cosmic horror came to sort of meet middle America and like the decay of the Trump years, and we got the program, which is the official version of that. I thought, like, if I wanted to contribute to Delta Green, I wanted to tell the story of the horrors of Countdown, which, as you read it, are as horrible as you can imagine. And just that decay, just solving that problem, creating new, worse, expanding, virally exploding problems of like fingers and dikes, and having your only tool to deal with those existential threats be the stupid cruelty and short-sightedness of human institutions, specifically those in the American government. At the beginning of God's Teeth, you eliminate one of the worst actors in Countdown. You take them off the board. And the rest of God's Teeth is about how awful that was.
There are consequences.
The nightmare that it spawns. The way doing that objectively good like thing you should have done has ruined your life completely.
Wonderful.
And how it wasn't really your life to ruin in the first place. And it just sort of spirals from there. Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, there's a group of people that do the right thing at great cost, and the campaign is paying for it.
I think that sounds wonderful, and I'm certain that people will love it, because that's just sort of the twist, right? I think there's a lot of those age-old questions of the time travel question, right? Where if you could go back and change X event, wouldn't it be so much better? Wouldn't everything be just so much better? And then what happens if it wasn't? What happens if it was just a terrible idea? Even worse.
Don't kill Hitler. The one thing we know about Hitler is he fucking lost. Right?
Well, right.
Don't possibly change it up so they did it better.
Yeah, it's not much more horrifying to me than the idea that what we're living in is the best case scenario.
for me, as a teacher, the thing that you get told a lot in teaching is if you just made a difference in even one child's life, it was all worth it. And I do think that's true. And there's a lot of good you can do in the God's Teeth campaign. And I think that there's like some things that are better as a result of your intervention as a result of that. Mm-hmm. But God's Teeth for me is really thinking about the nightmarish scenario of that. Because like I don't teach one kid. I teach 30 kids 7 times a day for 30 fucking years. Like, do you know how nightmare it is to dedicate your entire life to improving that situation and you get one? Like, yeah, like, I mean, you can be like, it was all just worth it. But like when the rest are in prison, are dead, or like you're just, you know, like, are those the kind of numbers that you imagined putting up when you went to teacher college? And I just expanded on that. Like, you think you're doing something as an FBI agent or as a CIA agent or as a crusader against the darkness for Delta Green. And the nightmare of it is that you get one life, you get one chance. And by the end of it, maybe you never served that thing. Maybe it was done before you hit go. Like that is something you got to deal with. Like, yeah. And, if Impossible Landskip is up bassing the unnatural sand loss button, I hit that a couple times in God's Teeth, but it's really about like, how's this helplessness one work? You know, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, bang. I don't think the helplessness gets used enough in Delta Green. We should have more hits under the helplessness metric of sand loss. Yes, agreed.
Oh, fantastic! I'm certain that I will pick it up and enjoy it, and then certainly probably drink afterwards reading it. That's the hope, right?
If we've driven you to drink where our work is done,
well,
or just beginning, really.
Just beginning.
I mean, it's like teaching. You know, if we can make one reader an alcoholic, then it's all been worthwhile.
So if we can drive one child to drink, then it's worth it.
We got a piece of fan mail back in the misty past where somebody wrote to us saying that Golden Dawn, the 1890s source book that we created at Pick and Publishing, we have a couple of scenarios that sort of wrap around we have 2 scenarios that wrap into a campaign setting for the game. And ultimately the game, one of the big reveals is that Arthurian legend is actually Mythos legend. That the Grail isn't the cup of Christ, but it sure does bring guys back from the dead. And Merlin is a horrible Mythos sorcerer, and Arthur is some sort of pagan warlord, you know, and there's all this once and future king shit where somebody works real hard in the Victorian era to wake up Arthur so England can be strong again. And Arthur gets up, looks around, and is like, who are these Christians that are all over my kingdom? And number 2, who are these Germans calling themselves the royal family of England? They're invaders. They're all going to have to go, you know? And the fan mail we got was somebody said that you made one of my players cry.
Oh, good.
because they were a huge fan of Mists of Avalon and that take on the Arthurian legend. And this kind of was like a giant dick punch to that whole thing about, you know, the pagan roots of England are better than, you know, somehow pure and better and cooler than the invasive force of Christianity in England. Of course, considering how things worked out with Mists of Avalon, I don't think we hurt her as much as the author did, but we're just going to walk away from that now. Anyways, yes, but if you could have that moment where somebody writes up and says, yes, I didn't sleep, that idea messed us up, how could you think of that? That's good. That's what we want.
I think that some of the older stuff that was put out through Paving Publishing, some of it is on the other bookshelf across the computer here, just because I'm somewhat of a collector of books, as I'm sure many of us are, it seems. I think that a lot of the older stuff through Delta Green is really fun, and maybe it doesn't hit every table, but it's one of the reasons why we went back and ran something like Artifact Zero, was because it was older, and some of those sort of deep I like the cowboy era, as it were. I like that the guy on the bench over there that's going to give you this manila folder, you don't really know whether or not he's one of you or not. And maybe he is and maybe he isn't. And I like the mystery of that, where, yeah, we're going to leave our day jobs. I'm going to leave my day job as a data analyst. I'm going to fly to Montana and I'm going to get into this, for lack of a better term, a storage shed, and I'm going to pull out some shotguns and I'm going to go do, what I do on the weekends and see what happens. I think that there's still some fun in that.
The thing that John Tynes was always pushing for during Pagan Publishing was these campaign settings for Call of Cthulhu, because Call of Cthulhu was kind of remarkable in that it never had a campaign setting. Like, this is the way you play Call of Cthulhu. It never did that to you. It was the Wild West. You could be any kind of character with any kind of group of characters associated for any means you wanted to. The good friends of Jackson Elias or whatever. His idea for Golden Dawn was, okay, it's the Victorian period. We're going to do a source book on the real Golden Dawn, the actual occult society. Mm-hmm. And as members of it, you guys have an interest in you have an interest. Just to be in this group, you have to be interested in the supernatural. And so you live in a clearinghouse of supernatural information provided by newspapers that are subscribed to by this group, and papers and people sending letters into the Golden Dawn or whatever about ghost sightings. And so everyone's collecting information about the supernatural. So it's this constant clearinghouse of your next mission in Call of Cthulhu would be, that'd be the clearinghouse. And it's also a clearinghouse for replacement characters when their faces get eaten off. You can just get the next guy who's a member of the society to help you out. And essentially that's what Delta Green was supposed to be. We didn't want to provide anyone with a Predator drone strike because that might make it too easy. We wanted this thing where you're doing it it's illegal, it's on the down low. You have you have a structure that brings together you and the other agents. Why are you working with these people, right? Why is the tribal fisherman working with the archaeologist and then the gangster? And, that was a sort of static COC thing. Why are these people brought together? And you're brought together by people higher up the food chain who have provided you with a mission and the ability to replace casualties. And apart from that, we didn't want to make Delta Green back in the day to be too powerful. We didn't want it to be, oh, here's your flashy thing, and you can commit all kinds of atrocities fixing the problem and then just flash this thing around and, nobody noticed that we burned down the entire museum just to get one mummy, Right. We made it so maybe we shouldn't burn down the whole museum, or perhaps we're going to have to come up with a slicker, less sledgehammery option for fixing the problem. And that way we maintain what made Call of Cthulhu always interesting for us, which was you're fragile. Yeah. As players, you're super fragile. The weakest cultist has the same number of hit points as you and could absolutely kill you with one shot with the right roll. You have to be super, super careful and think out every, it can lead to analysis paralysis as players trying to figure out an attack plan. But boy, you think before you jump. You really do. And yes, sometimes automatic weapons in the games can make people jump before they think, I'm not going in that cave. Right. I can hear breathing. Here's an Uzi. Okay. And then they'll go in the cave because they have their wubby. But when we were playing Call of Cthulhu set in the Wild West, let me assure you, we thought long and hard about our black powder single shot gear before we went and got into it with anybody. We're like, yeah, how many rifles can I carry? Just keep dropping them like in a John Woo movie. You shoot, throw it down, and okay.
Nicholas Angel on the back of a horse with 5 rifles and 2 shotguns.
Yeah, exactly. But
shotgun brace.
A golf bag full of shotguns.
we just had that. I just had that conversation with a masks investigator, and she was like, "Well, I'm going to take my rifle and my shotgun." And I was like, "How many hands do you have?" They're both long arms. Where are you putting them? Yeah. And you're going to walk down the street with what? Just go ahead. Just tell me how you're going to do it. I want to hear it. Let me hear it first. And then she sat back and she was like, "Oh, right." And I was, yeah. Well,
that was one of the things I always loved about Call of Cthulhu is you don't get to just wander around town festooned with weapons and swords and armor and stuff, like you should walk off the battlefield like most fantasy settings. You've got to conform to the rules. and you can't scare the locals, and you can get yourself, and you'll get yourself in trouble with the authorities. And when you say, but Joe is going to summon Azathoth, that doesn't pull any water with the authorities. That's why it's up to you. The authorities aren't there to help. And even with Delta Green, we wanted it to be like, guess what? The real authorities, the part of the government that buys nuclear aircraft carriers, they either don't know or don't care. So it's still up to you.
And furthermore, you don't want them to know. I think the tone and tenor I'm trying to get with some of the games, the campaigns that we'll run with Delta Green is I actually kind of want their home vignettes to be as potentially scary as anything we do in game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've survived this portion of this operation. Now you have to go home and you have to look your fiance in the eye, and you're going to sit down Tuesday night and have dinner. And
you're going to work, honey.
You're going to have to figure out what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. And we'll see how that goes for you.
I love the idea that you'd come back and I can't talk about it. Like, I thought you worked for the IRS.
Right. Like, aren't you a janitor?
Aren't you a park ranger?
Right. Yeah. So I think what that touches on for me is sort of what I've taken from reading a lot of the Handler's Guide before moving on with some of this, the stuff that we're rolling out is Delta Green's about fear. And that can come in a lot of different ways. So when you approach scenario writing or when you approach gameplay with fear, what are some of the touchstones you tend to use beyond the, oh, look, here in the house there's this creepy creature, or you see a shadow, or whatever the case may be? What are your go-tos, and what do you think handlers can do a better job with approaching their players with?
Well, so for my part, I think one of the big things is just to remember that the way you get to fear is with consequences, and don't let yourself sort of be sucked into sort of giving the players as much protection against the evils of this fictional world as they think they want. Because as we've all talked about and seen, the games of Delta Green that are really successful are the ones that become the most appalling and the most horrifying and the most sort of hilariously off the rails disastrous. So let them suffer.
Yeah, consequences is a big one. I always find the grim dark of the 31st century, of Warhammer 40K or whatever. Okay, 1 billion people died again. Right. It loses all. It loses all.
You want to make it personal. You want to try to use the sort of the realism, quote unquote, of the setting to help the players get into the heads of their characters, and then once they're in the heads of their characters, put those characters through the ringer.
If the players fumble a combat roll and miss and shoot some innocent bystander, either dead or maiming them permanently or whatever it is, as the handler, you should go out of your way to figure out ways to make that person 1,000% real. They were not just the person in the blue shirt, they were, a father, and they, volunteered on the weekends or something, and, they were doing good things.
Here comes her wife screaming with their baby daughter.
And what are you going to do? Make up for it? Well, it's Delta Green. You're going to lose some SAM points, probably drink a lot. Efforts to try and fix that problem. Let's say the character goes, okay, I want to smooth out that SAM point loss by doing something good for them. There's all kinds of ways you can make that a horrible, like, you think money's going to bring Dave back or make up for what you did to him, or, the trauma you caused his son seeing him shot dead, but, that's not going to work, and now imagine the players have this widow who's stalking them, trying to figure out who they are so she could bring consequences to their doorstep. And I don't just mean mechanical sand law stuff, but like, was your character supposed to be there and shooting a bunch of guns around to save the world from Dave, who was going to, summon Azathoth or whatever? it could get really sticky really fast, when those fumbles are attached to real people, or, heaven forbid they have a car chase. The number of casualties they can generate from car chases. And frankly, law enforcement generates from car chases all the time, where either they chase the guy, he crashes and he kills some innocent bystander, or they let him go and he crashes and he kills some innocent bystander. And it's just these horrible ways that they just can't win, in those situations. Consequences are huge.
Because this is a game of supernatural horror, right? You want to present that effectively too, right? You want to sort of learn how to figure out how to foreshadow things, how to convince the players of the horribleness of what's about to happen to their agents if they take the wrong step, so that
or to happen to other people. I mean, maybe they can just leave it alone and let it happen, and somebody else can take the hit instead of them. But how bad is it?
You always benefit from sort of building that up, and so so that it doesn't just sort of come out of nowhere and feel, random, right? I don't know, Caleb. What are you thinking?
For me, I think that build up is important, especially when you're talking about cosmic horror, where the essential disconnect is the total mutability of human experience and compared to the threats that a human faces in terms of Delta Green. So the way I work with that, I think of them like crime stories because it helps because they're essentially investigative. But I also find that like when I am approaching the evils beyond the stars, if I lead the players through the evils that are next door or inside their own house or behind the flag that they serve, I find that the taking the Yog-Sothoth's avatar or speaking to Nyarlathotep as more seriously than just a tentacle monster, but like as a swirling mass of awfulness, it goes better, and the characters and players treat it more dramatically and thus get a more fearful experience out of it. If you've walked through like other forms of fears that they're not necessarily at the table to deal with directly in that. So that's why when I do Delta Green, I kind of try and approach it like a film noir, like a noir of sorts. Like we're going to move through the awful human behaviors that make you try and figure out a magic spell, that make you desirous of the thing that you could gain with that, or the group or the adoration of a cult. Like we're going to go through that like psychological nightmare that you have in your head. And then you're a good person because you didn't go that route, and you're going to see something deeper. Like, yeah. And that's where you can really get the horror aspect of it for my player.
I've found you can never go too far wrong if you make the worst evil villain of your piece relatable and sympathetic when the players learn what's going on and they're able to sort of see them through their own lights.
Well, the whole point of sort of the idea of hypergeometry and magic as imagined through Lovecraft was it's a way to cheat reality. Essentially, it's a way to cheat physics and cheat reality. And there are all kinds of things that people want to do over for or fix for that are simply impossible because, we don't live in a world where you find a lamp or a monkey's paw or whatever, And but these people they've gotten their cheat, and they can fix things. And a lot of the worst things come from muddling with these cheat codes in an attempt to do something good or put something right. Yeah, we've had plenty of cultists over the years who are like, wahaha, I'm going to bring Yog-Sothoth and he's going to eat everyone and then profit. I guess that's what happens next or something.
That's my dream, is to be eaten.
Yeah, I get, okay, we got some of that. That's cool, but that's generally not how people think. They want to know, they want to know, okay, it's Yog-Sothoth. I'm going to get to go back in time. I'm going to eat the future. Now, it's Yog-Sothoth throw eat everybody, but I'm going to get a gateway back so I can go and live out my life in ancient Rome, which somehow is the world that we ought to be in, and I won't have to deal with the climate change or anything that's happening now, or I'll escape with my family into the past and they can live, you know, hundreds of lifetimes or whatever with their descendants in a world where we're going to be dead all by 2070, but I'm going to escape. You know, they've got, you know, whatever, you know, they've got some not necessarily terrible goal, but, you know, that's the problem with means. You know, once your means are fucked up, all you've got left is fucked up means. You don't get to go, well, we saved democracy, says America, you know, after the Cold War. All we had to do was put up with a few death squads in a few dozen countries and terrible fascist regimes that, you know, promised us they were 100% not communist. And what's a few 100,000 bodies this way or another so that, you know, our way of life can be protected or whatever. Bad means deliver bad means, you know, they become what matters. And
this kind of sparks an interesting question as far as future goes. Most of the Delta Green products are positioned from a current date looking backward, if memory serves correctly. And please correct me if that's not true. Is it possible to have a Delta Green product that's set in the future? And is it something that you'd look at like 2030, 2050?
It's a great way to be wrong.
Sure.
I mean, that's the number one thing. I prefer to look a year back and get it right and be comfortable with the details. I mean, that's me. I would just I would prefer to get if I'm writing something in the future or it's going to be set in 2024, I could get the presidential election wrong. I could get all kinds of things wrong. I'm more comfortable looking back so that I know solidly what the world is.
And we kind of keep the focus on the present day because that's where we all have to live. You know?
Okay, agreed.
I keep ripping from the headlines, knowing that by the time I finish it, it will be a historical piece. So future is hard. And that, like, I can't predict stuff, how crazy. Like, I've written God's Teeth 4 times now, I think. And during one of the drafts in the final scenario, which has already took place in an ice facility at that point, in between one draft of the book and another, the ice facility I based it near had a scandal almost exactly equivalent to the one I claimed was going to happen in the book, down to the horrific crime performed by the guards.
Wow.
The exact facility it was performed at, to the exact age group, to the exact children. Not because I am some like prescient Nate Silver type, just because I'm like,
but you made it
fucking idiots.
The 538.
You're going to do the stupidest possible fucking thing.
Well, yeah, you're not Nate Silver. You got it right.
Yeah. and that's going to happen. And then the other thing that happened between that, right, is that COVID happened. And it happened as the time I said it, which was set in the future when I really wrote it. Because I'm like, okay, we want to put 4 scenarios between these two, so 1 a year. So I'll make it 2020. So I said a little bit in the future. But by the time I rewrote it, it is a climax that occurs peak lockdown. Your government agents are in masks, gloves. Nobody knows what it fucking is. It's killing 9/11's worth of people a day. Half the country doesn't fucking think it's real. And it's a game about the apocalypse. And I don't know, man, I certainly felt it. Like, I felt it in my bones. It was in the air. Like, and I mean, that's a thing that, like, even now in 2023 has been memory hold. Like, that's now a historical fact that you have to really convince somebody of, because the push of like, well, it's over. And it never happened. The thing that never happened is over now. Like, right. But like,
also it was a biological attack. Don't forget that. It was also an attack, but it's over. It didn't happen. All these things are true.
Yeah. And like, if I'm talking about apocalypse, it felt insane. It felt like what the game's about, like the widening gyre, the center not holding everywhere at once. And it, and it's just because I was looking at right now and like try and portray that as accurately as possible, because it makes it look like you did a lot of historical research when it comes out.
That right there, the idea that you're living in a world where reason and causality are collapsing around you. That is, a friend of mine once used to use a phrase about what terrified him the most, and he said, that is, I am afraid that math will stop working. then math will fail. And people are like, well, how can that happen? You know, just very sort of, you know, prosaic responses. But when he said that shit to me, I was like, oh, I knew exactly what he meant.
Well, and
you know,
it's still a fight that's going on, family to family, city to city, region to region. That idea war is still happening.
mm-hmm.
A lot of
we live in different realities now.
Yeah.
The quote I pulled in But God's Teeth is from Ouida. It says, take hope from the hearts of men and make him a beast of prey. Mm-hmm. And like by 2020, that's where I'm at. Like, you know, like, yeah, like I don't like, and I wanted the characters, like the characters in the story, because I think it's an interesting like horror theme to comment on. I wanted them to deal with the fact that like you're in this war. You're in it for the right reasons. You think you're doing the right thing. You've lost. It is over. Like, you know, like the hope of you fixing this wide scale never happened. It never was there. I certainly, as a millennial, feel that way. Like, I feel like the handle was broken off by the time I got into the control room. And do you just quit? Do you do the Dylan Thomas Rage Against the Dying of the Light? Like, because I think that's a choice that matters. And I think it's interesting to see what characters decide to do that. But if I'm commenting on the future, I mean, I can't deal with the present right now. I don't even know how I would begin to comment on what comes next.
I'm still dealing with the several years I feel that are a blur or vacuum, like that were COVID, were COVID until, you know, like 6 months ago. I'm still dealing with the mental fact of like all the things that happened that I know that I and many other people have not processed. Things happened, but they were glossed over because reality became a little fluid, dimmed, corroded, whatever it was during the time.
And by the way, you can, if you're running a horror game, look that lesson square in the face and adapt it. Because that's what your agents ought to be feeling like in their lives all the time.
Yeah.
But multiply it by about 10.
Yeah. You wonder why the game has been referred to as the, you know, scream at your kids and throw dishes at your wife and kick the family dog game. All the bonds that keep the bond mechanic that Shane brought us makes it so much more personal and so much more intimate, these horrors. It's the ending of The Mist, having a little argument with Sandy Peterson online where he's saying, oh, The Mist sucks. It was a total happy ending. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
You see a different movie.
Did you watch the ending of The Mist?
Yes, he did. And he says, well, at the end, the government shows up and everything's fixed and all the monsters go away. And it's just this total sellout happy ending.
Glossed over the car scene.
Is he a utilitarian from a philosophy example? Like,
I guess.
Out of a lecture hall? Like, as a man?
I was like, does it? Yes, it is absolutely fixed on the big scale, but it doesn't do Thomas Jane any good.
No.
I didn't find that trolley problem too distressing.
Not to mention, there was no trolley problem.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't a trolley problem. You know,
that's the greatest twist of the knife at the end of that movie. God, whatever.
And it is absolutely one of the most apocalyptic endings. Well, the world didn't end. I'm like, yeah, it did.
Yeah,
did for Thomas Jane and everybody else in that car. And there you see those trucks going by with a bunch of those jerks from the grocery store being carried to safety after they were trying to sacrifice children. And none of them are going to bring that up when they're in their evacuation center about, what did you do in the grocery store? Well, we went crazy and listened to the crazy cat lady in the neighborhood and thought we needed to murder each other for God. But then, you know, some people made us stop. But okay, now everything's fine. Yeah, it's one of the most apocalyptic endings I've ever seen of a film. And I just...
That's because it's so personal. Because it's about what happens to this one character, or to this handful of characters, you know, not about what happens to the entire world.
But again, you talk about consequences. When you raise the stakes that high, that choice isn't a foregone conclusion, and it becomes powerful even if they make a different choice. Like, we just finished the God's Teeth campaign, and I was really enamored with my friend Baz's character. I thought there were a number of great role players in that game, but when he was around the fellow people in Delta Green, he was a complete asshole. Like, it became to look clues. It was like, they pay you to read shit. They pay me to shoot people. Like, he would just get drunk in the corner. He was abusive, like, just awful to them. But like, he'd have Bond scenes with these kids. He's like, no, this job has ruined me. I can't be near him. So he just donates all his money to his estranged son. And before the last game, he ends up getting locked up in Portland riots, and he just bankrupts himself, like getting the kid out of jail and like getting his record cleared with all of his CIA contacts and stuff. And then his little buddy that trauma bonds onto him that he's been abusing for the entire campaign eats it in the finale. And he's just like, I was the best person I could to my family. I resented being with you and what it meant it happened to my life. And he just grabs a gun and goes to die in the desert fighting. Like, and it was just, I thought it was beautiful. Like, he didn't do the alcoholic dad thing. He was deadbeat, but he was like, I want to take care of my kid because I don't want them to see this part of me. But it just spewed up in resentment in a different, interesting way, even though he never did like the deadbeat dad decision. And, you know, other people like adopted kids and stuff because they wanted to make up for things they'd done in Delta Green. And they had these like hyper idyllic home lives because they had high SAN scores. And then you'd cut to what they did on Saturday night and somebody's fucking bleeding out in the back of a car while the back windshield and the mirrors are exploding as they're firing at you.
Suddenly it's the opening scene of Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah. And then like it was just Monday morning and it was ballet practice and she was just tight bunned, neurotically staring straight ahead at like a ballet mirror, bunch of kids dancing. And I thought that was great too. It's just when you turn the dial up that high, I think every choice gets interesting, even if it is like a flaw or holding it together miraculously, because that's not a happy ending.
No.
So yeah.
Have anyone here run a game where a Delta Green character or Delta Green player has said that, yeah, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go have a family, or I'm going to do my life. I'm going to do my actual job. Don't ever call me again. I'm forgetting I ever knew you. I'm forgetting I ever met you. If this somehow is invoking a 9mm retirement plan, just make sure I don't see it coming. Right?
That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen very often, because what that means is you're taking your character out of play, right? So, yeah.
And we are kind of sadists for the things that we put our characters through. If we were better to our characters, we would allow them the option to jump ship and maybe roll somebody else up. But
I think it's like you said, like you are talking about the sort of person who sees the sort of thing that Delta Green guys deal with. And those are metaphors for real evils in the world. And these people really exist. But you're talking about the type of person who sees that. And rather than making like the choice that I made, which is fuck that, I'm going to go play elf games for money. That seems way more fun and a way to have a life and not be miserable. You're talking about the person who's like, no, fuck it. I'm going to die fighting it. Like I will do something about it, hell or high water. And that's a certain type of person. And I think they have interesting stories to tell. But like, if you're thinking about a Delta Green age, especially the cowboy years, like that is a cantankerous big personality. The person who's not just like, it's the 90s. I'm going to do something to sit around and feel great and buy a house for like $2. Yeah. No, I'm going to live a life of misery to fight evil because we still have that. Like that type of person is like a big personality. Like, because most people are content to pack it in and go home and watch X-Files.
As someone who lived through the 90s, I think I need to emphasize that it wasn't that great either. Let's just
I know, but like
I just want to point out that it's like who was it, James Elroy talking about America lost its innocence on November 22nd or 23rd, 1963 at Dealey Plaza. And his response to that was, "Yeah, you can't lose what you never had."
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, people talk about like checking out nowadays, like post Biden, you're out to brunch again, all that kind of stuff. 90s invented brunch, man. Like they created the brunch.
That is a decade that was completely checked out to brunch the entire decade.
I know, but like, it's where brunch was formed in my conception of it.
Even when we're bringing guys back with, depleted uranium poisoning from the Gulf War, and even though we're blowing up the tech bubble and then standing around like, who could have predicted all this money would go up in flames? I'm just saying, the dudes who are just like, I'm going to get a gun and solve it myself. That is a tragic personality type, I think, in any era you put it in. Yeah.
Well, I think that is a wonderful time to get to the final question of the interview series, which is always something personal. And that is, if you're an agent for Delta Green, then who do you actually work for in real life?
I actually got fairly along in my application to the Central Intelligence Agency. When I got out of grad school, I actually got flown up to DC for interviews, and there's this whole thing where they sent me, a packet saying, "Don't tell people why you're going to DC, and we're going to buy your plane ticket." And there's going to be a guy with a sign that says like Ace Tomato Company or whatever, who will collect you at the airport, drive you to a hotel in Renton, Virginia, that you will be picked up and driven over to an office park, that won't be marked as government. And went through a bunch of interviews and stuff, and I was really feeling like I was going to make it. And I was like, this is going to be great. The problem is that I've been studying Latin American studies, and if we've learned anything about America doesn't give two shits about Latin America unless they're commies. They just absolutely could care less. And so I go to DC, I do all these interviews, I'm really feeling good about it, and then it's the August coup in '91 in Moscow. And I am the only guy on the planet praying for the neo-Stalinist reactionaries to seize power so the Soviets will be scary again, and the CIA will have a budget and I will get hired. And those dirty, drunken Bolsheviks just stepped on their own dicks until Boris Pugo had to blow his own brains out and shoot his wife, like it's a reenactment of what's his name, Joseph Goebbels back in the Fuhrer bunker, and the rest of them sort of surrender meekly to Yeltsin and Gorbachev, and then the whole rotten sweater unravels. And then I'm watching this, and suddenly I get this letter. It says, "Hey, you did real good on your interviews. You're going to come back for, to get your polygraph test." And I'm like, "Great, I'd love to." And they're like, "Yeah, we're not paying for it though." What? We're not going to pay for the airplane or the hotel, but you can come up here and take the polygraph test. And I'm like, I'm not getting hired. I'm not getting hired. It's over. They think it's the end of history, and I'm not getting hired. But I was so committed to that job. I wanted to get that job and get a job in the intelligence directorate doing analysis. I fucking paid for my hotel and I paid for my plane ticket. And I went up there and I did the polygraph at headquarters, and then went home and waited for the letter saying, "Thank you, but we're never, ever, ever going to be bothered by anything ever again. So you're not needed." I think the thing that I would have wanted to do if I'm working for Delta Green, that career path was the first one I was on. And that was before I went to law school and got enamored with not enamored. Got put off the law by law school and practicing it. But that would have been the job. Okay. That would have been a job I would have.
Okay. But what's important here is, are you an analyst, or are you somewhere in Latin America?
I am 6.5 foot tall and weigh 300 pounds and as pale as a fucking ghost. You really think I'm going to do anything in Latin America? I might as well have like a helmet with a big siren and alarm on it. Just woo, woo. No, I am not leaving the DC area.
Like the CIA contact in all the Bond movies.
The horrifying thought that they would send me to do that job does not fill me with confidence.
All right. Shane? Who do you work for?
Well, so a little similarly. When I was in my mid to late 20s, I and much thinner and healthier. I was.
We all.
Yeah, I came within a hair's breadth of getting hired by the FBI when I was in law school, and so in this dream scenario where on the side I'm committing horrible crimes, in allegedly defense of humanity, then yeah, I've probably went the FBI route.
Fantastic. Caleb?
Oh man. Yeah, I've had a lifelong fear and wariness of cops that keeps me from most traditional Delta Green backgrounds. Didn't help when I went to college and became a Marxist. But then, so probably like Department of Education or social work. Either way, I'm having a bad time. There's a reason not a lot of people are playing my Delta Green story. Much like teaching, I imagine it would be billed to me as an analyst position. And I would wish I had like dungarees and like a full jumpsuit or some sort of blue collar equipment by the end of it.
We had all kinds of friendlies back in the day who were academics that Delta Green would pull into shit and say, we need your expertise in the subject matter. And then 10 minutes later, it's like, here, hold the flamethrower.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like I imagine my onboarding, much like my onboarding and teaching, would have been very much trial by fire.
Yes.
Throw them in there and see if they come out.
You understand socialism? Here's this rifle, point it downrange for me.
Yeah.
Hold the door.
Yeah. So probably Department of Education or some sort of equally grisly thing. And who would ever write a book about Delta Green in the Department of Education?
Don't throw that gauntlet down.
Yeah.
Someone will pick that.
Maybe I did it. Maybe that is God's teeth. But yeah. There we go.
Yeah, maybe. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the information and the fun.
If you're looking for me on a computer or a telephonic device, then sure. I'm on Twitter as Shane Ivey. I'm on Facebook occasionally, but years ago I pretty much stopped accepting friend requests except for people I genuinely know because I got into many horrible screaming matches with total strangers, Donald Trump, and
yes, as you do.
So I'm most active on Twitter actually these days until Twitter, it finishes its long process of implosion and spiraling into the gutter. And then I don't know, I may just give up and be a hermit at that point. It's like, do I really have the energy to learn a new social media platform at this point? I mean, I don't know.
Scott, where can we find you at? Should you so choose to be found?
Should they stumble into the University District of Seattle, Washington, I am still the lone surviving Legionnaire here at Fort Pagan Publishing. This was the same house that John Tynes, Dennis Detweiler, Blair Reynolds, Brian Appleton, Jeff Barber, a ton of people moved into from out of University of Missouri when they brought Pagan Publishing out here. I'm too lazy to move and instead have, over the years, as various pagans left, I just kept importing people like my wife and her friend Mish, who ended up making the house livable by human standards. I suspect Ken Haidt would not recognize it since the days when he referred to it as a frat house for serial killers. But I'm on Facebook. I was being drawn to Twitter by my wife, who was found a lot of very good community on Twitter. But a certain South African seems to have fixed that. I will not be going on Twitter. I will be watching it spiral. So I'm still stuck on Facebook on the Zuckerberg's machine while Mark's burning a pile of money the size of Montana.
You can find me on Patreon. You can find me playing Delta Green with a fantastic cast of players, some of which are included in this interview. at Delta Green Dead channels, patreon.com/DGDC. I also write my own games at Hebanon Games. We have our own Patreon, patreon.com/HGod. We're on a hiatus now, but it's because I'm working on the second edition of Red Markets. So we're recording actual plays, and you can hear that come together as it goes along. Social media, it'll all be dead soon. Rest easy. Don't worry about it. And then as far as finding me in the physical space, if you know where I live physically, how did you get that information? And rest assured that the compound will defend itself, and we train and drill regularly. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
So I want to thank my 3 guests, Scott Glancy, Shane Ivey, and Caleb Stokes, Park Dream Publishing. I am certain that our listeners will enjoy the things to come from our Delta Green series. So thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great night.